board to order and welcome our new board chair, Joanna Reese, to Daya. And at this time, I'd like to kick it to her to basically introduce herself. And she's going to be running a predominance of the meeting, but I'll jump in where necessary to help guide and steer what's going on. But please.
Well, thank you. It's just an incredible honor to be here and to serve on this board. We were talking earlier about sitting on a board. I said we have to always change that. We don't sit on boards, we serve on boards. Yeah. So I look forward to the service. I want to thank Angelo Farouk for his past leadership. I know he's not here today. He and I caught up by a phone and he said he'd be available to me. As well as my friend over here who said he'd be available as past chair to just kind of help me get my sea legs. A little bit about me. I moved to California 32 years ago with a young family. I came because I thought California was the innovation capital of the world and I wanted to be part of it. I also wanted to live in a community that was incredibly inclusive in terms of raising a family. And I just loved the beauty of the state. So that's really what brought me here. I've spent my entire career in entrepreneurship and innovation. I started off early in advertising, brand management, investment banking, but in the late 90s, I founded a venture capital firm. I was one of the few women who was able to go out and do that as actually my first fund. I was the only GP. I raised my money all by myself and then ended up raising hundreds of millions of dollars. So I was quite fortunate. And I served on the National Venture Capital Association board, which brought me to DC a lot in terms of working with policymakers about promoting entrepreneurship in our country. And I also have been for 25 years now on the board of an organization called Endeavor. And we're a nonprofit that supports high impact entrepreneurs in communities where people don't think that it's possible for an entrepreneur to build a big business. And we provide mentorship and support. I created a fund within that enables Endeavor to be economically self-sustainable. When I started, we were in 2 countries. Now we're in 45. So we're having a significant impact. And I've really seen firsthand over those 25 years how communities have been transformed when people have high quality jobs. I also was a senior partner in an organization called the B Team, which was a group of business leaders, including Richard Branson and Mark Benioff, we might know from California, who really believe that business can be a force for good. And we really focused on climate. We thought if we could take more aggressive, net zero commitments in climate in our businesses, that we could really help move the public sector. I spent time at COP21. Unfortunately, in our current administration, I'll bite my tongue, but really coming out in force. It was the first time actually the business community showed up at one of the COP meetings in force, and I think we really had a big impact there. I've also spent a lot of time on public education reform and, supporting entrepreneurs in that. I was on the board of the New Schools Venture Fund, which at the time was the largest venture philanthropy fund supporting education entrepreneurs. I chaired boards of organizations like Nifty and Build. So spent a lot of time really thinking about the progression of the education system to job creation. And just in terms of my own actual work, I've been on more than 30 boards in both the public markets, private and nonprofit. I've probably 30, I would say, business boards and 10 nonprofit boards, of many of which I've chaired. In terms of thinking about this board, I hope that I can bring a lot of private sector, kind of connections, experience, organizations that I think need to get more involved in what we're doing here. I'm very concerned about AI. I've spent a lot of time interviewing leaders in AI. I was just at the Tate Modern in London interviewing Reid Hoffman, who was one of the founders of OpenAI, to talk about what the impact of what this is going to be. I just chaired a panel at the Ford Foundation in New York with leaders talking about what's going to happen with AI and the disruption. And it's interesting, unlike other waves of innovation that focused on geographies or business sectors, AI is going to have a functional implication, and it's whether it's a small business, a large business. And the fear I have is a lot of those entry-level jobs are going to be the ones that don't exist anymore. So making sure that we're really thinking about that in the work that we do. I've watched the videos online, so I recognize a lot of faces. And I hope that this is like an engaged board and we have lots of great dialogue. I'm a huge proponent of board diversity. One of the boards I chair is called Illumin Impact. We're all about getting women and people of color onto private company boards. Just a quick statistic, there's 5,600 public companies in the US, of which 2,700 have revenue of 100 million or more. There are 17,500 companies in the US with revenue of 100 million or more that now have no diversity on their board. And those are the companies that are impacting our society over time. I always think back to like in social media, I knew people who were on the board of social media companies who wouldn't let their kids use the platforms. Like who was there asking the hard questions about how this was going to impact our society? So I'm a huge proponent of that. If we have diverse perspectives, we're going to open the aperture on opportunity and then uncover blind spots. So with that, I can't tell you how excited I am to be here and to dig in, and I look forward to working with all of you.
I can't tell you how excited I am that you're here,
Yeah.
frankly. So let me introduce you to Ben. Ben is our steward of the board. He is the one who's going to be doing the roll calls and all of the attestations and whatnot. And so please request our first roll call.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Just a few points. Can everyone in San Francisco and SoCal hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Perfect. As I go through, please let me know if you are a designee and give me your name as well as correcting my pronunciation and giving me your location. And we will begin with the Honorable Senator Ana Caballero. Chancellor Sonia Christian.
Anthony Cordova, present. Sorry.
No worries. Honorable Assembly Member Damon Connolly. Jamil Dada.
Here.
Kamiar Amiri Devani. Diane Factor.
Here.
Director Nancy Farias.
Javier Romero, delegate for Nancy Farias here.
Angelo Farouk. Dean Falk.
President in San Francisco. Good morning.
Lawrence Frank.
Present in Los Angeles.
Leonard Gonzalez. Jason Hayter.
Present.
Los Angeles.
Jennifer Haley.
Here.
Hala Hijazi. Secretary Kim Johnson. Secretary Stuart Knox.
Abby Smith designate for Stuart Knox.
Hillary Lentini. Stephen Levy. James Mangia. Stephen Monteros.
Present.
Janice Norman.
Here.
Robert Redlow.
Here down in LA. Good morning, everybody, and hello to my friends in San Francisco.
What about your friends in Sacramento?
Yeah, they already knew.
For more fun.
You too, you too.
And Chair Joanna Reese is here. Nicole Rice. Charles Riojas. Director Kimberly Rutledge.
Mark Ehrlichman here, designee for Kim Rutledge.
Angel Sanchez.
Excited to be here for one person.
Fabrizio Sasso.
Here.
And we have Robbie Kalen for
Giavo.
Aveen Sharma.
Good morning, here in Los Angeles.
Honorable Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas. Jeremy Smith.
Here.
Annette Smith.
Here.
Bruce Stensley.
Here.
Superintendent Tony Thurmond.
Carolyn Zachary here for Superintendent Thurmond.
Floyd Trammell. Amelia Tiagi.
Los Angeles.
Gloria Young.
Good morning, here San Francisco.
We have 24 and that's a quorum.
Cool.
Fantastic.
You can continue
Yeah.
to the next.
This meeting is being conducted by a teleconference on Zoom.
We have one more person from San Francisco.
Leonard Gonzalez, Labor Training, San Francisco.
Great. I believe Hala might be joining. She's just running a few minutes late as well.
Right here.
Awesome.
I'm here.
Cool. So we have. Yes, absolutely.
26.
27 now, actually.
27.
Okay, now you can proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. So this meeting is being conducted by a teleconference on the Zoom platform. It's being recorded. The California Workforce Development Board is meeting in Sacramento with satellite locations in San Francisco and Hawthorne. A link to the meeting agenda and the board packet information can be found on the CWDB webpage at cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. Public comment is now open and will be heard after each agenda item and again prior to adjournment. Public comments will be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov or by being recognized by the chair. We can allow just 2 minutes for each comment per subject, so please make them concise. All public comments received by email will be read aloud during the public comment periods noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. Will now introduce new board member, Angel Sanchez.
Hey, thank you so much. I had the pleasure of meeting Angel a few years ago at a weird conference. It was somewhat related to the defense industry, but really it was related about the Inland Empire and some of the great work they were doing. And so I've been privileged to meet him and talk to him about some of his efforts in advancing his work in that area. And obviously he's well connected to Jamil and some of our other board members. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to have appointed him to the board and swore him in this morning. So thank you.
Sure. I was gonna well, it's Angel Rangel Sanchez. I am a native Californian. I was born and raised in Riverside, California, and went to college there. Apparently, I can't leave the community, and I do love being there. I'm the CEO of an organization called Phoenix Technology. We're a manufacturer of helmets for firefighters, first responders, basically the world's heroes, distributing products all around the world. That company is located in Riverside. And in addition to that, I am the president of a nonprofit that started in Phoenix Technology called Phoenix Gateway, which supports individuals with intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities. And so I've been very passionate about workforce in a number of capacities. I come from a community that is often overlooked within the community within Riverside. Came from one of those groups of friends that would never amount to anything. And unfortunately, many of them followed that. And I was a little too stubborn to believe in that, but feel that there's a lot of opportunity for true social mobility throughout those communities. And so I've worked in a number of capacities as an employer, but also serving on the Riverside Workforce Board and a number of different, not quite as many as Madam Chair, but a number of different nonprofits that are very focused on creating mobility for generational growth. And I'm very excited to be here. I'm passionate about this. I do a lot within disadvantaged communities. Our company actually employs anywhere from 30 to 30, I think it's about 35% neurodiverse individuals today. And I will say this, that is the best employment base that you can choose from. Our quality and our efficiencies and our profits have all gone up as a result of that. And so rather than in spite of, it's actually because of. And so that has led me to lead the charge from a business perspective to an economic development driver aspect. There's plenty of people available to work. And so as we look at insourcing more product, I'm very proud that our product is 100% American made and about 90% California made. And so that opportunity to manufacture here in California utilizing an inclusive workforce is something I'm very proud of. And I also work with our chamber and the military and a lot of different things. So I wear several hats, and this is one I'm probably most excited about. So thank you.
Great to have you here.
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Now we go into the actions. So this is the meat of this. Obviously, we're going to start with minutes, and then there's thing more specific as we get towards the end. But these are going to be very rote. It's first item, explanation, then allowing for public comments, and then There's actually 3 segments of public comment because of the venue scenario that we have.
Yeah.
So please.
I'll take it away. So the minutes from the meeting from March 26, 2025 were provided to you in advance. Are there any comments on the minutes from this? Nope. Okay. Emily, are there any public comments?
No public comments in email or on.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
What'd you say?
The final is an in-person comments in
Yeah.
LA, San Francisco, or Sacramento.
Just got to check.
Very much so Bagley Keen oriented here.
By the way, I hope we get more public comments
Me
over
too.
time. Like, I really hope that we're able to really reach out and engage. I assume there's no.
We're doing better
Yeah,
than
okay.
previous. This one had a very good topic area, I guess.
All right, I move to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
We actually, because of the format that we have, with 3 locations, we have to do a roll call.
Oh, we have to do a roll call
So
vote.
every one of these votes will be passing to Ben
Okay, Ben.
to take the roll.
Here we go. We will start with Vice Chancellor Tony Cordova,
Aye.
Jamil Dada,
Yes.
Diane Factor,
Aye.
Javier Romero,
Aye.
Dean Falk,
Aye.
Lawrence Frank,
Yes.
Leonard Gonzalez,
Aye.
Jason Hayter,
Yes.
Jennifer Haley,
Aye.
Hala Hijazi,
Aye.
Abby Snake,
Yes.
Stephen Monteros,
Aye.
Janice Norman,
Aye.
Robert Redlow,
Aye.
Joanna Reese,
Aye.
Nicole Rice,
Aye.
Mark Ehrlichman,
Aye.
Angel Sanchez,
Aye.
Fabrizio Sassman,
Aye.
Ravi Kalam,
Aye.
Aveen Sharma,
Aye.
Adam Smith,
Aye.
Annette Smith,
Yes.
Bruce Stensley,
Aye.
Carolyn Zachary,
Aye.
Amelia Tiagi,
Aye.
and Gloria Young.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay,
The ayes have it.
great. Next, we're going to vote on the resolution on standards for infrastructure-related funds, and Bruce Stensley will present our second item.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try and run through a handful of things. Sorry, I'm going to take up a couple of minutes to give a little context to this, but mostly also to set up my partners in this crime, Jeremy, Fabrizio, Diane, Larry. So you may recall, well, first let me just say, I don't know all of you. My background is I run an economic development corporation. I want to state that from the beginning because doing the work of business advocacy, I think this is a policy that aligns perfectly with what we do in regional economic development and consistent with programs we're running for the state, the California Jobs First initiative. But also wear the stain of having run a workforce board for Ventura County and the city of LA and work for the State Workforce Association. I don't get to brag about those points very often, so I thought I'd throw them on the table. Anyway, that's what informs my perspective in being part of this. A little bit about what is our motive, what is maybe a little bit of our authority, and what is the context that got us here. In terms of motive, you may recall it was, I think, March of 2024, we had a whole lot of public comment. We received from staff an overview of what was called the SB 150 report, a piece of legislation authorized by Senator Durazo, very progressive in making sure that we were looking to set standards, high road standards for the investment of training dollars with federal and other money in California. And California does an excellent job of that. But what we heard in testimony is that we always need to be vigilant about having a lot of making sure this is universally sort of accepted principles on labor standards, equity standards, climate standards. And what came out of that was the notion from several of us that does the workforce board actually have policy standards of its own relative to those key points, again, labor, equity, and environmental or climate standards. So we ended up coming up with is this notion of writing a resolution, which is before you today. I won't go through the detail in the resolution. Others can make the case and you can read it for yourselves. We don't have unilateral authority very clearly as a workforce board. Our charter in the unemployment insurance code is to assist and recommend and jointly put together policy. The board's position, and very much in collaboration, we really appreciate the staff work, and I'll come back to that as well. The context for this is not new. The workforce board, we could be drawing examples from federal policy, we could be drawing examples from all sorts of think tanks, local, regional, national, but our own board, our own staff, and our own policy for years has been to fund high road programs across the board. And so this is really just taking language from what we've already believed in and already been doing and saying, let's wrap it up in a resolution so at least we have it tidy in one place. So what then? Four things that we want to really look at. One, it shouldn't go without saying that we're not doing this in a vacuum, that we have a very interesting national set of environmental or policy issues. And a lot of the high road standards that I think we believe in California, and we believe in, if I could speak so boldly as a board, are a bit under siege by national policy. Not trying to pick a fight, but I think it's worth acknowledging that we don't do this in a vacuum, that we actually are doing this in that context. Secondly, as noted, this is an action item and we'll be encouraging everyone's vote in favor of this. Three, I really want to thank Brooke for her work and leadership on this. She's been incredibly patient with the committee sort of format. It takes a year for anybody to come up with an idea and pushing it forward. Apologies for that, but here we are today, and the staff as well. And then finally, while I'm your spokesperson so far, and I'll be quiet in a moment, as mentioned, it's been Jeremy, Fabrizio, Diane, and Larry have really been pushing the notion of what ought to be the content of the actual resolution before you. Finally, from my angle, as I said at the beginning, this makes perfect sense for me running an economic development organization. Some of you are familiar with this California Jobs First initiative. We got 13 regions around the state. We all took $5 million in planning money over the last several years. And we were tasked in that role with bringing community testimony from every kind of disadvantaged, disconnected organization, group, population, neighborhood that's been left behind in the investments in workforce and economic development. And we certainly came up in, I think, each of those 13 regions with the notion that policy like this, that makes sure that we are looking to develop standards for quality, labor, equity, and climate. Recommendations from you, I would kick it to Diane next, or any of the several who were part of the committee that drove this. Thanks.
Thank you. If I can be recognized.
Yeah,
yes. Thank you, Bruce. You say it well. Just a little bit of context. We raised this resolution a year ago at a meeting where the back of the room was packed with public comment, and the presence there was students from UC Berkeley, people from the labor community, from community groups, climate groups, kind of unexpected, because it's very rare that we have that. I remember kind of being shocked coming in and finding the room packed. And I think it was because it was a presidential election year, and there was some concern that the future may not protect our standards in workforce development. This high road concept, which has been around for over 30 years, which kind of says you work in partnership, often like they do in other countries, like in Sweden, for instance, with government employer partners who take the high road, who offer access and advancement and quality. It's okay, I don't care. I'm so used to it. Anyway.
Fun commercial break there.
Yeah.
That was encouraging.
That actually broke the ice. And that that we wanted to somehow in California say that we are the innovators, that we work with the employer partners who see advancement, that work in counties that need this kind of on-ramp for people who may not get into great jobs. And here we are a year later. I am Angelina, born and raised in Los Angeles. I do not recognize my city. It's really upsetting what's going on, that the kind of military presence in the streets, okay, against people that have built our communities and our infrastructure. So I just think that given what's happened at the federal level, that we need to preserve these tenets that were part of the initial federal law, as opposed to just the state and are assisting our governor. There is a federal law, the Workforce Innovation, and Opportunity Act, that we need to hold sacred and at this point. And so I think now more than ever, we need to say, we in California honor that, remember that, and not going to succumb to these kinds of federal programs and laws being chipped away at. And so I'm very passionate about this. I've now retired, but I did this work for most of my career. And I worked, in LA County and saw the benefits of a good job and a quality job. And I think now also we feel, the climate change, from the floods to the fires, to the heat domes, it's just upon us. And so I feel strongly that even though I know we're assisting, that we as Californians take this as our standard.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
So Jennifer Haley, I just want to recognize Diane and Bruce. You're speaking very passionately about this, and I agree with the sentiments you're expressing and kind of your concern and kind of the aspirational nature of the document. My concern, and I think there was really good discussion on this at the last board meeting, is while the desire is for this to be expansive, I think it's written in a way that might actually limit our ability to do the things that we want to do. I think there was a great comment about a back and forth with some of the board comments about it being more like aspirational, but I think there are things in here where I read them and I don't understand what it means. And so I don't know how we effectuate it or what that looks like. And while—
Jennifer, can you be specific about that?
I think the comment on having a responsibility for the board to stay abreast of, to educate local communities, kind of number 9. I think the supporting and prioritizing policies, I think there were great comments in there. If we're too focused on labor agreements, if we're missing kind of a large segment of jobs in the economy, I think that's something we want to be a little bit careful not to, put our thumb too heavy on the scale. I think when we talk about the federal government and kind of upholding a federal regulation, I think that's where we have to kind of recognize what we can and can't do. And one of the, I think, underpinnings of this board is how can we effectively support California and job creation in the workforce and navigate within the systems that we find ourselves that we cannot control. And so I think we have to be careful not to cling to something that was and figure out how to navigate kind of the current political dynamic, which is very different than it was a year ago. And so I think that the way that we uphold these values and the aspirations that you all are talking about is in our actions, not necessarily in a policy statement like this.
Do you want to respond at all or? Bruce or Diane? No? Okay, other comments? Go ahead.
Let others hop in first.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm sorry for that musical interlude. So similarly to what was just stated, one of the things that stuck out to me in this document is while the intent of the board to protect and to kind of put our support statements around jobs that are currently held by individuals and what those jobs should look like and how they should be defined as quality. And I say that in air quotes because there's a lot of things, that define that. So that's not the point of my comment. But what I saw that was missing is talking about workforce development.
Yeah.
Like there were no principles that talked about how we move people into what are the policies and principles and what's the word for, like activities and sentiments that we support that move people into quality jobs. And so as the Workforce Development Board, I thought, geez, somebody's trying to reach me. As the Workforce Development Board, I thought that was a critical piece that was missing. If this is supposed to be our statement related to jobs and economic development and, the green economy, that seemed like a very critical component was missing from this document.
Other comments?
I agree. I was one of those that I responded very strongly to this proposal in March. And I want to thank the people that worked on this. I appreciate that your efforts going into it. But having spent the last 3 years focused on supporting small businesses, I find that this, as written, is inadvertently exclusionary. Those small businesses that are driving innovation in our state, they are not labor represented. They may never be. I don't know. That's up to the labor organizations to make that case to their workers. But they also provide opportunity jobs for those people that Nicole was just talking about that maybe are not in the workforce or are marginalized in the workforce and need an opportunity job to get to a quality job, right? If we just focus on quality jobs, we're leaving off a whole swath of potential entry-level opportunities for people to get into the workforce and be successful. I appreciate having standards. I don't know that this particular document gets us where we should be as a state board.
Other comments, San Francisco or Hawthorne?
Yeah, I think LA has a couple comments.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm the person who had said this is an aspirational document last time. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of history. So, I was a deputy mayor in the city of Los Angeles for 8 years, overseeing the workforce development system. And at that time, our workforce centers were mostly connecting people to jobs that were security jobs, not the kind of quality jobs that one would like to do. Then the Great Recession hits, and we got a double dose of workforce development funding through ARA. And there were no jobs, so it was all about building training partnerships. And in building those training partnerships, we were able to build some things that are actually permanent in terms of, so it's not just about connecting people to good jobs or not just about good jobs. The resources that the system has the ability to open up opportunities for people that would not normally get those good jobs to be able to get those good jobs. So we were able to build, start the Hospitality Training Academy. That has been by all standards, and it does have labor at the table, but it has all of the signatory contractors, all the hotels. So it's very much a business environment as well. It's Taft-Hartley, apprenticeships as well. We built the first high road construction careers in LA, partnering with the MC3 curriculum to be able to get literally thousands of folks into the good construction jobs. Honestly, the building trades used to be a largely white led and certainly white membership. But the dollars that we've been able to use over time have been extremely meaningful in terms of accessing this. We did actually work in a number of areas which had no union. So biotech was a big piece of work where it made total sense, to work just with industry. We saved Hollywood CPR, which works for the Hollywood industry, which is continuing to sort of function. We built partnerships with community colleges so that we could actually get people more, completely trained, because the way our case management system works is you have to place people within a year. So it's really much more reliant on short-term training, but it would be great to kind of build the partnerships. We did co-locations with community colleges. So there's a lot of work that has played out, and we sort of also built our way into public sector opportunities for folks. Again, those are not easy to get. If it's a good job, it's really hard to get. And we have the resources and the know-how now using, for example, in the public sector, how to use pre-civil service classifications to get people into public sector jobs. And it would be people that have every reason to be excel at it, but may not have exactly, the college degree for often, program for jobs that don't require college degrees. So, I think, I'm not at all opposed to us taking more time on this document, because honestly, us approving this document today, we approve it, and then it'll go into, in my opinion, goes into somewhere that I'm not exactly sure what role it plays. But if there's a way to have real conversations about these dollars, these rare dollars that we have to bring workforce development opportunities to folks, and it cannot be exclusive because we work with homeless populations, right? And opportunity jobs are important, right? There are different ways we kind of do our work. We'll do that this way. So if this is somehow sounding exclusive, I think we need to sort of, address that. But I would just say that the value of, learning from our experience as to how workforce dollars have been able to leverage opportunities as well as create, long-term successful programs that are still with us, should not be lost in this equation. That's my 2 cents.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention, small businesses were mentioned, and at least 80% of all businesses in California are small businesses.
96%.
96%. So can we not modify this a little bit to make it all inclusive?
I think we put that in.
Can I?
I'm just gonna say this because this is just where we are today. I think that this document, this resolution, is a result of a lack of diversity in the conversation. I just have to say it. I think it was a great small working group, but I don't think that the coalition or committee was broad enough to incorporate some of the things that have been raised up here today. And I think it would lend itself to being a more powerful document and resolution with more voices in the conversation.
Can I address a key point? Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
Follow. Yeah,
Let's try to get the rest of the comments and then if we could.
really a lot of reflection on the same sentiment. So in reading through this and listening to thank you for the YouTube meetings. I was able to watch several of them, but listen to some of the previous conversations on a number of different topics. One of my concerns was very much associated with that. I come from a business that when I adopted leadership of it, it was very small and not able to pay not even close to a living wage, nor have benefits. And today, not only are we able to provide incredible benefits and opportunities, we are able to create opportunities for others in more of a I'd say charity-based, but a charity-based approach. And a lot of our growth and a lot of our capability to expand has been closely associated with the workforce efforts of 10, 15 years ago. And so looking at the comments that didn't seem to have a response, and ensuring that the language is inclusive. I think you guys did a wonderful job of creating most of the language. And I don't think it's a net zero of taking this out. I think it's adding to, so that it's more inclusive of the employers like ourselves and the number of employers. I'm big on the local economic development level. I said, you keep looking to bring new businesses in, help us become $1 billion business, and then we can be the business that you're looking to attract. We're already here. We love the state. We love this community. Help us to grow. And I think it's important that we look for that very sentiments within this document, because while there was some comments I remember seeing about aspirations, it's aspirational, but what I'd be afraid of is a local board reading this and saying, this is doctrine and this is how we have to build our programs. And so I very much, Member Smith, agree that we should look at making more inclusive language built into this.
Other comments and, yeah, remote locations, and I'll come back over here.
Yeah. Bruce first?
No,
Oh, we got.
let's, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the piece that I'm missing is, I understand sort of the notion of aspirational, but what is the target? What is the, for lack of a better term, challenge we're seeking to overcome? What is the problem we're seeking to fix? I thought I heard Bruce say, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this document is reflective of the work that we've been doing, or the work the board has been doing, and sort of trying to encapsulate that. I think for me, it becomes an issue of if the work is already reflective of the values, that's the value statement. So what is the purpose of restating the value statement that's already reflective in the work? And by definition, sort of do that, you raise sort of the questions that are being raised sort of around the table, right? So are we inclusive? Does it take into account these aspects? And so, you know, a lot of what I'm trying to ensure is my participation board is, how do we keep the main thing the main thing? And workforce development is the main thing. If we don't have a work product that doesn't reflect California values, then I don't know what purpose and intent of the document is, and maybe I'm just missing it. So sort of the notion of aspiration, I get it. Casting a vision. We've got a number of reports foundational documents that are sort of trying to detail the work that we're doing. So I sort of, from my aspect, it's like the aspirations are, the vision's already been cast. Sort of how do we do that work? So I'm just missing what challenge we're trying to overcome with this document, and then putting that into the context of the sort of the federal level, which wants to pick a fight with California every time we turn around. You know, I'm just not interested in fighting with an administration that doesn't align with my values when I could do the work that does align with our values. So that's my concern with the document is I just don't understand challenge we're trying to overcome, problem trying to solve.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure, I can't see the rooms in LA and San Francisco. Are there other comments?
Yeah.
I do, yeah, I just had a question if I could, if now is the right time. I was interested in Kina's perspective. If we were to adopt, whether it's this version or continue to iterate in some future version, how would that impact your decisions in the operations? Does it have an impact? Is it helpful? Does it create challenges? I'm just trying to put it in context as well.
Yeah, I mean, as currently written, there are some contextual pieces that we realize would probably stretch capacity a little bit, but not outside of the scope of what we currently do. I believe we are able to meet the expectations of the resolution as written, given our current allocation of staff and provisions, but you know, things change in the future. However, I would say that my position is to foster what the board and our board members want, and have been trying to do that since, in fact, my first meeting was not the meeting where this was raised originally. It was the second meeting after that. But you know, my intent has always been to listen to the members to ensure that there is alignment with their desires and needs, because this is an advisory board, which, as Angel referenced, does become a way to advise local boards through fiat. So there is some in both ways, and I can see the value in presenting this statement. I can see the value in not presenting the statement. I serve for the administration and definitely want to fulfill what, the governor is intending, and that's in line with California Jobs First and the master plan for career education, which is definitely things that are referenced within this document and the thing that we're advancing. So I would say that I am a neutral arbiter in this, trying to ensure that the members' voices are heard in the amount of capacity that they feel that they need to be heard.
Other remote location comments?
Do you want to have a comment here too?
Sure, go ahead.
I agree a lot of the previous comments and particularly Mr. Norman Tom's recent, the most recent comments. I do have a question though here. It looks like we have 8 kind of value statements in regards to what the board values and the principles we support. And then we have this number 9, which I found to be kind of a little, which really in terms of actions and activities, I think they're all just in number 9. So I'm not quite sure. I clearly understand what the board is committing to doing. I'm not sure how for the first part of that first sentence, how that's related to the second part of that first sentence, staying abreast and then committed to using public workforce funds. So I would really like to see if there's a way we put some more clarity as to what, after we determine what our values are and have that diversity of thought in the document, what exactly are the actions and activities that this board is committing to doing? And can we make it a little more clear?
Yeah, number 9 was very word choice specific because of the statutory language that exists in the UI code, which gives our direction as one who is to inform local boards of best practices to improve workforce systems, which is directly under our charge as the statute states. And so we couldn't go too far afield over, certain language provisions of but we can't do anything about what federal law changes. We need to be able to reflect what those changes are to the practitioners in the field so that they can actually adhere to the federal standards, wherever they may be. From our perspective, the state laws are directed by legislative authority authorizing the programs or the opportunities with which we program. And so those are prescriptive as well. So we were trying to land language that we knew we could moderate within both the expectation of board members and then what our statutes say. And that's why it's, quite frankly, very loose in keep abreast of as a more specific way of saying, we are going to monitor these things. We are going to do what is in our charter and in our statutes and unable to go further than that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and for me, it's more like committed to using public funds and then disseminating findings. I mean, I do think that that board can make recommendations. So I don't see that here in terms of disseminating as opposed to setting or establishing, maybe use terms like recommendations. So thanks.
Abby?
Yeah, I think, and carrying on from what Mark was saying about greater clarity, it would be useful to have more specificity about which public workforce funding. I mean, I believe the impetus for this for the federal infrastructure dollars, and it would just be helpful to clarify that. And I think that would help sharpen intent.
For your context, the SB 150 legislation was related to the IRA and IIJA federal programs that were initiated under the Biden administration, in which they tied a percentage of the funds allocated to specific projects in California to a workforce development pool that we would then be able to program to advance those projects more specifically. And that's where SB 150 had the carve out language for workforce development, but no specific language around how we would deploy that capital. And so the intent was to create some sort of fostering language about how we intend to use that money.
That's very specific.
Yeah. Jeremy?
Well, thank you. Jeremy Smith with the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. Just so everybody knows, we represent 450,000 workers in construction trade unions, just to give you that context. I worked with Diane and Bruce and Fabrizio and the committee on this. And thank you, staff Kina and everybody else who helped with this. Our brilliant legal counsel, wordsmith extraordinaire back there. Thank you for the time. I just want to just pull out some words from this to give you an idea of sort of where we came from, right? Job quality, applicants who are free from discrimination, local hire, enforceable labor standards, strong labor standards, good jobs, equity, community benefits. And I don't think we're solving for a problem, Janice. I think we're suggesting that state and federal funds that come down to California should meet those ideals, right? We should invest taxpayer money in jobs that are careers. You know, a job is a job. Some people just need a job, but we should be advocating for jobs to turn into careers. Everyone here and everyone on the screen believes in all of those words. We're all spending our time as business owners, as labor advocates, as people who have other careers here to make sure that people in California who get taxpayer dollars to get into a job or a career are treated with fairness and dignity and respect. This is a document not just for us and for the staff to be guided by, but it's for all the employers in California who don't believe in any of this and who might get some of this taxpayer money and don't care if they create jobs that are careers, that are living wages. So I think that, you know, taking this back, expanding the membership on the committee, I think that's a good idea. And sort of trying to synthesize this is a fine suggestion. I think you and I were whispering over here about that being a good idea too. But we should be standing for all these things. And I think it should be in writing. Jamil, I'm not sure if I predate you on this board or if you predate me, but you and I think, are the longest two serving members left on this board.
Yes.
I've been on here, I was on this board under the Schwarzenegger administration. And I remember this board's policies were to have job fairs at big box retailer parking lots. That's how we spent workforce development money. Now, again, sometimes people just need a job. And a job at a big box retailer is a job. If they don't have a job, that's a start. But that's not, I don't think that's what we think of as a start to a career. You know, a career you can make a career out of any job. And I'm not casting aspersions as a representative of people who, workers who don't go to a traditional four-year college, right? Who are blue collar workers, who work with their hands. Those are great careers. And I don't think anybody on here believes that we need to go back to how things were done under that administration. I'm not saying that at all, but I've been here long enough where that's happened. And so having principles like this on paper, on a website, sends a message. And it's important that we believe those words that I spoke a while ago and pulled out of this are important to all of us on this board. Again, everybody in here believes in all those. I'm not at all casting any aspersions. I don't take anything personally that anybody said. This needs to be done correctly. And I would just finish by saying, I feel like number 9, you guys are already kind of doing those things. Yeah. There's not, or I, as a board member, I would hope you were doing those things, right? And I will help advocate for more staffing for you guys at the Capitol. And Janice will go, Cole will go. We will do that for you, the budget subcommittees. Those of us that know that process. Like, if you need more work, more help, we will work to do that, make that happen. I'm sorry, Nicole, I don't mean to speak. Janice, either. I don't mean to put things on your to-do list, but like, I feel like number 9 are things you are already kind of doing. And so thank you for that.
Jennifer.
So I just want to say, I don't know if it's because of our new chairwoman, but we are certainly having an active conversation, which I very much appreciate, which I think drives a better result, right? I think the worst thing that we can do is rubber stamp something and have concerns, but not air them and talk through it and kind of figure out the best thing to do. So thank you. I think everyone here and, in the other rooms for being able to have the conversation. I just had a couple more things. I think, Member Smith, I agree with all of those words that you say. This says a lot more than that. And I think that's my concern, is making sure that we're being thoughtful about what's here and what's not here. And I think sometimes when you get too specific, the assumption is you deliberately excluded things that are not in there. And so I think you end up limiting and being inadvertently exclusionary. And I think when we go back to the process, I really appreciate Member Norman, your comments about why, what are we doing this? And I think there has to be sort of a step back of what is the purpose of this document? Why do we need to do it? What do we want it to do? And what do we not want it to do? And I think those are things that we have to explicitly talk about and say, and recognize that there are going to be unintended consequences, and we need to try to anticipate and mitigate them, or decide that the unintended consequences are not worth the problem that we're trying to solve. And so I think from a process perspective, being very upfront about that can help us figure out, is this a document that ultimately helps us, or is this a document that ultimately ends up inadvertently hamstringing us? And Hyena, I'm going to push back gently on you a little bit. I appreciate that you're here to effectuate the will of the board. It is our responsibility to rely on your expertise and your assistance in making sure that we understand the priorities of your staff and your leadership. And so your, robust participation in, is this helping you or is it not, might help us flesh out kind of that why not, what we hope it does, what we don't want it to do.
Fair. That's absolutely fair.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate all the comments, and I wanted to just share a little bit where I'm coming from. Before I was on the state board, which I've been on for, 10 years or something. I was on the LA City Workforce Development Board, and they were, all the workforce centers, of which there are many in this county of LA and in the city, were there. And I was hearing about people getting placed in GameStops, in liquor stores, in places that I didn't think it was really great. This was my opinion, for people to get an initial job. I also was running a workforce development program later where we were offering people jobs in the county of LA in the various departments, from healthcare to public works, beaches and harbor, parks and rec. And a lot of our participants had been in those jobs. I talked to lots of young women who worked nights in liquor stores, had been held up, so that was where I got this notion of a high quality job. I am the daughter of a person who made a life after World War II in small business, sold men's suits, had them in the days before ready to wear, okay? And had that was, I really believe in small business, and that the economic benefit for people in a community to have a small business, to gain access to a good life. And I felt like in number 7, we put private business employers, community, and small business stakeholder. Okay, so if we need to wordsmith that, but I am totally open to small business. I like that. And it doesn't have to be labor repped for me with an official union, but it has to be a stepping stone. And so my experience at the LA City Workforce Board was, it wasn't that taxpayer money was being used for dead-end jobs. And so that's, I'm older, that was a long time ago, maybe that reality has changed, but that's where I was coming from. I wanted us to hold that high regard for working with employers who give people a real step forward.
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
So sort of want to circle back on sort of 2 things. So 1, I'm hearing the document is not really asked. The intent of the document is not to be solely aspirations, to be operative. You want the document to sort of guide the investment strategy of state and federal funds related to workforce development, which I can appreciate, and it makes sense to me. I think in that regard, I think going back to what are we trying to solve for, to me has even more importance. I really appreciate Jeremy and Bruce sort of saying the notion of how do we put more work into the document. I heard the challenge that I agree with. So I know right now I run a trade association representing cable broadband providers, but in my former life, I used to wear a green t-shirt and represent the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, asked me. So the notion of state and federal dollars should be invested into employers that value their workforce. That state and federal dollars should be invested into opportunities that put someone on a career path or provide a trade that provides for economic mobility, upward economic mobility, are all principles that I could agree with. I think the document, I didn't read the document to be oriented in that way. And so if there's a way to do that, where it's oriented to say, look, we want to invest in partners that have these types of principles, that have this types of demonstrated track, right? Those are the people that we want to partner with and share our resources with. To me, is something that I think has real value, because as I'm hearing Diane articulate, she's not looking for this to be, and I'm assuming you're aligned with your working group.
Sort of. Try.
So you're not looking for this to be an aspirational document that gets adopted and then goes into some abyss.
No, of course.
You want this to be a document that we sort of can point to, reference to, staff is referencing to, as something that is being used to direct the investments. And if that's the case, I'm there on trying to make sure that we're partnering with good people. I'm not interested in giving state resources to, and if that's someone that's providing, and this is my first foray onto boards of this nature, so I don't know all of the terminology, but if that means that we are investing in someone whose mission is to provide that first entry-level job, but then has a strategy and scheme to help individuals leave whatever their job is, but help get promoted to the next job that puts them on a career path, I think we need to be open to that, right? So I think helping me get to the why, help me understand more. And so if there's more work that needs to be done, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Fabrizio?
Yeah, thank you. I really respect what everyone has had to say today. And I want to thank everyone who worked on this, Bruce, Jeremy, Diane. I'm usually a pretty good read in the room, and so it looks like the direction would be to continue to work on this resolution and be more inclusive of other voices today. And so I know that when we put the working group together about a year ago, I think ran into a problem with numbers and limitations on that. Is that still the rule?
Yeah, so the mechanics and the logistics of editing on this side, because we have a significant number of additional voices who want to be included, we'll probably have to do this in a very one-on-one, staff to individual, get those comments, incorporate those, then try and aggregate it as best as possible to then disseminate that out to the wider group for a secondary set of comment. Mainly because, Bagley-Keene rules on coordination amongst existing board members on a specific topic, it then becomes public forum opportunity, right? I'll let Brooke.
So what would be the problem if this conversation was in the public?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this here, we can incorporate the commentary that has been made on the record today, but far specifics of language changes and stuff like that.
Well, I think we need more than language changes.
Yes.
I think, and this speaks to process.
Yep.
And as issues come up for the board, what is our process, especially with Bagley-Keene, to make sure we have an inclusive group working on whatever we're trying to accomplish? And, who should be in those rooms or whatever, I don't know.
Can I just ask a question on your question, so I don't get lost too? Is there a limit on how many people can participate on the committee? Is that why?
Yeah.
That's for badly.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like,
I didn't know
let
the
the
number.
lawyer speak on this one.
Want to have a special meeting or any sort of notice meeting, there could be open discussion, everyone could participate, right? If this is to be done between meetings, and some sort of form that's not open to the public, then there are rules about who could participate. And we cannot have a majority of either the executive committee or any standing committee or the full board working on it, right? So we can come up with the right small recipe of people to work on things, like kind of was saying, or we can just have a special. Those are sort of.
So what is that number?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, I've always wondered.
Well, right now we're at 38 people on the board, right? So it would have to be less than quorum, so 19 or less.
Yeah, the conversation could go.
19 or less, but none of those board members could constitute a majority of the executive committee.
Right.
So those are the
That
two.
seems
things.
possible.
Without-
It is very possible, given current construction, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is-
So the other thing I did want to
Yeah.
bring into the room and make sure that this is as part of the conversation is we've spent a lot of time and energy talking about this resolution that only impacts the funds that are actually available from. The biggest indicator of the success that we will have as an entity is at the local level. Having been a local board member for more than 20 years, that's where, so those jobs at the liquor store or whatever, that's where those jobs come from. It's at the local level. And I don't see anything in this document that talks about our influence and recommendations at the local level to ensure that they are in alignment with focusing on quality jobs or good opportunity jobs.
Sorry.
Okay, so I have.
You were in my blind spot.
Yeah, no worries. So I have a couple of questions, because, trying to get all of this into a resolution is difficult, because then it turns into a white paper policy document, right? So then that led me to think, okay, so maybe we need something that is more like that, because it sounds like there's a policy that we're trying to establish or trying to articulate. And then that led me to, do we have something like this already? Like, how is this incorporated into what we are currently using as an operating document or document that reflects our vision or priorities? Is it? And if it is, do we need to revisit that document instead of trying to create something else?
Yeah. So in reference to that specific last piece, the state plan, which is authorized by WIO and required under the statutes therein, was just submitted recently, and that does include the vision mission statements, does include the high road language, does include a lot of the things that are articulated within this document.
Right.
Not specifically the same types of language, but very similar. That is a 2-year, we're in the process of starting our revision process for this next one. It was finalized prior to my entry.
Right.
So we're in the process of revising that document now. It is due next year in June, but given the current federal situation, we are unclear as to whether that will be a requirement or not, whether WIO will continue as currently authorized or whether we'll be getting some other program. But from what we do currently, like our vision is incorporated into that. We adhere to the high road standards, everything that we program from state money, including the discretionary pool of funds that is authorized by the WIO at 15%, which is governor's discretionary monies, are programmed under those doctrines or under those police structures. Principles. High quality job includes good wages, benefits, the opportunity for mobility, and the sequestering work of voice within that. So those are still standards that are across the board in all the programs that we deliver. And so that's why it's easy for us to meet these expectations. That doesn't mean that those expectations may change. And that's why I think that there is a sort of, for at least from my perspective, belief that there are modules that could be added that make it more complex, or things that could be taken away if we have, more significant inroads into labor organizations within, middle income jobs. I don't know. But being adaptive to what the current market situation is something that I will definitely strive for.
Yeah. So are we, in discussing this, are we premature? Because we have to go back and update the state plan. We have to go through that process with the belief that WIOA will continue as is. So is this premature for us to be trying to?
What we're wrestling with constantly is like, like my staff has been asking, do we continue working on these things knowing that, any day now, they might say all of the rules of the roads have changed. And the answer I'm telling them is until I hear otherwise, status quo.
Yeah.
Until we understand that there is clear direction federally, there is no change to what we're doing operationally. And so from that perspective, we are continuing to include our principles in the document that we submitted to
Because excuse me, I'm trying to figure out where this fits in everything that we currently have. I mean, do we pull out what is currently governing us to see if it accurately reflects where we are today and then pull that out? Do we create something that can live because WIOA and that requirement might go away? And so we want to make sure that we have a principal document that is California based, that we can put on the website and say, this is who we are about. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, where, like, is this the extent of the job we need to do, or is there something bigger that we need to do? Yeah, period.
I don't know how to answer.
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Let's, Anthony, go ahead.
We've got Anthony
Yeah,
and
then we'll come back.
Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make two quick comments. First one being, thank you guys for all the hard work and for the most part, getting this to where we're at right now. I see that I know that there's a lot of implied component of it, of partnership with the higher education or education attainment. So when we start talking about quality jobs, we know there's a level of credential and or degree attainment that also coincides with those jobs and those requirements. But I know it's implied also when we start talking about the high-risk training partnership or the California Jobs First, that's implied that we are going to be collaborating, working with our education providers, right? And our training providers. So just when we start talking about that, I wanted to highlight if there's an opportunity, if we're going to go back and revise, we could be a little bit more specific on what that education partnership is going to also engage with and look like on that end of everything as well. Because we do spell out the apprenticeship, right? But there's more than just apprenticeship.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer.
And the last thing I wanted to say is, good luck on getting that committee going. I don't want to do it though.
Whatever you serve on for. Jennifer.
So I think I might have a suggestion based on what Kaina just shared. Perhaps it's distributing that organizational document that we're already operating under that has the vision, the mission, the principles, reviewing it, seeing if there are things that are missing from it compared to what's in here. And it feels like that's part of the process of revising it. And perhaps the end goal is, if we are not required to do that, then maybe we adopt that as a resolution to make sure that we continue to operate under those principles.
Good suggestions. Angel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the important things is Member Smith hit the nail on the head. So your comments were the resolution, in my opinion. It was exactly what I think the vision and intent was. And I don't know if it's appropriate for me to move or make a suggestion at this point that a subcommittee reevaluate, starting with maybe kind of a needs analysis of what is our intent and what is the objective of this and what is within scope. And then from that, with an inclusive group, really identify the actions very similar to what the group did here. I think a lot of it's here. One of the things I would say though is sometimes saying less is going to mean more because it eliminates some of those restrictions. I look at things, quality jobs most definitely is what we need for so many people, but I also have to consider, especially on my nonprofit side, opportunity jobs for individuals with disabilities may be the only path at all. And so that language, I would be fearful of restricting some of those opportunities too. So I think, like, in my head, when you were saying it, I was like, put that on paper and we're good to go, because you were talking about all of those parameters that are important and what attracted me to be a member of this board. And so I would, I guess, move that we form or expand a subcommittee to evaluate the need, look at what is currently already, and then define in that scope, create a document that's fully inclusive and can be utilized as, because a resolution to me is a resolution. That means that's what we're doing. And so my thoughts.
We'll get to the rest of comments here. We'd have to see if there's any public comments and then we can go back to that for sure. Jeremy.
I would just say to Member Cordova's comment, apprenticeship is mentioned because these are federal infrastructure construction dollars. So that's the apprenticeship model is in the construction industry. So that's why that word is in there. And then to what Member Rice said, the opposite is true. WIOA could be significantly changed. And this is a statement of our principles as a board about what we think federal tax dollars should be spent on, right? And so having something like this out there in case something drastically changes with WIOA, which I'm looking at who knows what's going to happen out there? Who knows what's going to happen out there? But this is usually, WIOA is usually a pro forma. There's changes made, but it's usually fixed, right?
They make America skilled again. So WIOA will change. And in the fiscal year 2026 budget, it's significantly reduced. Not surprising.
Yeah.
Right. So having been part of a DOJ or organization already, like, it will change.
Yeah.
Don't know what it's going to look like. It might, who knows, it might be better. I know in the last go around of this administration, there were a lot of Congress people who were not excited about WIOA because across the country it's really hard to demonstrate the efficacy of those funding dollars, right? Because we don't tell a good story. And so it will change.
So that, just to finish my thought, that's my point, right? Like having something like this on paper sends a message that this is what we believe in, right?
But it feels like it needs to be bigger than
Okay.
what we have.
Okay.
Thanks. I think 3 points. Hitting everything I think people have already mentioned. First, the language on the agenda is standards for infrastructure related funds. We did not think that we were adopting policy relative to, but we are thrilled to have the conversation relative to how we should, that's the conversation a workforce board should be having. What really, not just aspirationally, and my second point is, and you've hit it, we are anxious about what public funds should be invested in, and Diane and I share some of that experience. We've seen lots of programs that invest in programs that don't go anywhere, and opportunity jobs are real. We just completed this research for the Central Coast where something like 50 to 60% of the families are living below a living wage standard, but only 25% of the jobs pay a living wage. And another 15 points are career ladder jobs that might get you there. We know that this is beyond our scope to completely solve. But these are the problems that we need to grapple with in terms of how do we help economic mobility? How do we facilitate access to quality jobs? We really want to have a broader conversation. Last, it's a very small point, but item 9 on the topic there in the bullets, it is intended only to say that we collectively expect a leadership professional organization to do what we're doing now, is to continuously grapple with and bring information on best practices to the table to how do we do a better job of addressing the enormous gap between where we are in labor capacity, labor skills, and what jobs pay. And we can't solve that perfectly. We started looking at infrastructure invested jobs. We'd be thrilled to expand this to a broader set. And then lastly, I think the principal's question is, I am anxious about, as we all are, where federal policy would go. But we're talking about adopting principles that I think by the nature of them endure beyond what are the vagaries of federal and state policy. we care about what are certain principles that we want to adhere to. We will adapt to whatever federal and state policy are, but our principles should remain the same.
Great, Carolyn?
I just wanted to add on to what Annette said, because in the fiscal year 27, adult education, we have a Title II is zero funding. And
If the White House proposed.
if the White House, yeah, the White House's proposal, yes. And currently we have not received our funding, so.
Oh, boy.
And then
I just, you already talked about it, but WIOA will definitely, the Education and Workforce Committee in Congress and the House has already passed what they want the House to approve. It's completely different, new name, like they always do. And when the Senate gets involved, we will have a new workforce, whatever it is. It won't be WIOA, and there'll be drastic changes. So it'll be completely different. Yes.
I do, if I could just add I think we're wrapping up. I do want to thank the group, though, that put together this resolution, because this is the most robust conversation I think we have had in generating that for us.
Okay, I just want to check. Any comments, San Francisco, LA? Nope. Okay, Emily, were there any public comments online?
No public comments on YouTube or via email.
And no public comment, any public comments here? Or in?
And in the room.
Not in the room. Okay, Bruce.
So as the person who had the honor of speaking first on this and having heard the conversation, and I think I ought to be deferring to you, but I think our notion would be to say, we don't need a vote today. We're thrilled with the conversation, happy to work with team to widen the committee to make sure that it doesn't exceed the number and continue this conversation. And I don't know where it ends up, but I'm thrilled.
Well said. That's where exactly where I was going to suggest we go. I do like Jennifer's suggestion, though, of sharing the existing.
Absolutely.
You know, up with everyone, if we can do that. And then what is the protocol, just so I know, if other people want to serve on this committee, how do we make that happen?
And we'll try to answer this different with Brooke.
And certain folks have already indicated that they will not.
Yeah.
Had time with Anthony yet, so just like, hold on, that just sounds right.
So, yes, I think what we'll do is we'll come back to everybody and solicit, interest in being part of the committee to land the plane here. We will include as much of the detail of the logistics and the mechanics of what the process will have to look like given the public record rules. And we'll do that probably by next week, for sure.
And if it helps, and I'm sorry, the chair.
No, go ahead.
If it helps, I mean, the four of us who are on this, 5 of us who are on this committee already, but helps with that logistical stuff. I mean, we could sit with individual board members.
I think
one of us with a staffer, because, we could kind of do this bit by bit, right?
Thank you. Yeah. Great. Yes.
Clarifying question.
Sure.
Specifically as it relates to Jennifer's suggestion about circulating
the vision plan and the state plan, yes.
Yeah, and then the statement that was made that until you receive direction otherwise, we've got to update the plan.
Yes.
So, and I know the effort started a year and a half ago under a certain context. It feels like the board is looking to grow beyond that effort. And so is the subcommittee looking to provide, I'm going to call it a vision statement because I don't know what to call it, a vision statement or set of principles that will look to inform the work that you're doing as you prepare for next year's submission?
I think that would be my design.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest, by the way, we're going to take a 10-minute bio break. So if you're leaving, we're going to do that just because I noticed people getting up. Anything else that you want?
No, I just need that.
Okay, yeah.
So based on that, like what I will do is I will work with staff to get information out to all the board members, soliciting participation in a working group specific around a resolution that is a little bit more expansive than just isolated to infrastructure, that is tied to the vision that is required under WIOA, but also tied to our vision that we currently program funds under. And try and get to a point where we can align the language to all the sensibilities that have been portrayed in the room.
Great.
We will send out some information from staff, probably by the end of next week after we've gone through figuring out exactly what the hurdles are going to be. And probably do some coordination amongst the folks to ensure, you guys are all very busy people. So trying to make sure that we can coordinate those timings and make this effective to at least get something in front of you guys by the next executive committee, considering how long we've been working on this project. So that is currently scheduled for, I believe, August 13th.
Yeah.
And so we have a very short timeline on our end, but that will mean that we're gonna be a little bit more forceful in your commentary receiving back.
Great.
But yeah, we'll definitely get on that right away.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. It was so great to just hear everyone jump in with their perspectives. So we're going to take a 10-minute fire break, 11:45, we'll come back in. And that way we can kind of change the dynamic in the room.
Thank you. Ross, can you put Live, we're coming back to order. It is 11:46.
Just 1 minute off. Next time, we're gonna be right on time.
I love this.
Okay. Now,
Item 3.
yes, I'm right here, sir.
Perfect.
Going to the Labor and Workforce Development Agency report, and Abby Snee is the designee who's going to update us on that.
Yeah, happy to do that. And I think a real continuation of the conversation we just had, which I also want to express appreciation for everybody who worked on the resolution and your openness to the kinds of comments and feedback you got, and to everybody who offered those comments. But the two main things that I want to share from the labor agency's perspective are exactly where we before, which is the federal landscape right now. And very uncertain. And a priority, for Secretary Knox and for us in close partnership with kind of the state board and the course of services brand is doing some contingency around the spectrum of scenarios and possibilities around federal funding and policy, which could be, status quo, continue resolution because they can't come to an agreement, or the White House bill with, the White House budget proposal, which gets rid of adult education, gets rid of special programs for special populations, including migrant and farm workers, and consolidates the 3 titles of WIOA into a block grant of about a 35% funding reduction. And also, by the way, would eliminate the job service, which are the EDD branch offices. And so House colleagues at EDD have run some scenarios about what the implications of those look like. We've put together a working group in addition to the leadership at EDD, CWDB, and as part of our intent to work more closely and collaboratively with the local boards. We'll have a few local board leaders engaged as well to work on those contingency plans. The notion of a federal block grant with new restrictions, the only thing we know from the White House budget is 10% should go to apprenticeship, does open up some opportunities for some blank slate visioning around what the workforce system could look like. So I think the discussion we just had and the role that this board has in, shaping, responding, working in partnership will be very useful, and very, very scary in many ways. Also some conversations going on about how workforce board directors can have educational conversations with their congressional representatives, especially when they are from the party in charge, around the impact of funding cuts at the local level, especially to businesses and their needs and their partnerships with local boards. So that is very, very much on our minds. Another element of federal policy, and we have started, are the coming work requirements for Medi-Cal and CalFresh, so Medicaid and food stamps. And we've been approached by the Health and Human Service Agency of starting to work with them on plans for how California could implement work requirements in a more humane way. The position that Health and Human Services has had is creating as many exemptions as possible. They will continue to do that. And I always want to look for the silver lining. I mean, we know that participation in education and training will exempt people. And so there could be an opportunity of working with, and Tony and his team are very closely connected to this with joined at the hip in many ways, which is about time. But if we can work out shared case management, referral systems at the county level, so that recipients of Medicaid, there would be probably 4.5 to 5 million health recipients who are subject to work requirements. I think there's about 90, which, and as perspective, the workforce system serves about 100,000 people a year. So the colleges were scale, and even at that, we don't have the capacity. But if we could figure out better ways of getting people in training, it not only helps them meet the work requirements, continue to receive those benefits that they and their families need, but also build some skills for the good jobs that we were talking about before. A real challenge here, and I've been fantasizing about where the private sector could really help, is the technology for confirming eligibility. We don't have it in the state. And I've been fantasizing for the last few days about how this is where the Gates Foundations of the world and the really big plans, could come together, build out technology and just give it to the states, because that much of the unspoken intent, I think in some ways it was explicit of the big beautiful bill, was just to make it really hard for people to comply with the requirements and then lose those benefits that feed their families, that keep them healthy, that going to result in hospital closures and costs passed on to all of us. So we'll continue to keep the board updated on that work.
And I'm happy to help in any way I can with some of those foundations.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I was thinking of you.
I just had a question on moving in congressional representatives. Would it be possible to get kind of talking points or what you want us to say? And I think one of the things that I was thinking during the earlier conversation, and I encounter this in my business, talking about investing employees, talking about employee appreciation. And there's a whole range of folks that they hear that and they're like, well, you want to say, well, because it's the right thing to do. And that doesn't resonate, right? It comes off as a little bit condescending. And so I think our ability to tie economic outcomes and prosperity to the work, that's what resonates with a lot of those members, right? You're not doing it because you're trying to be a good person. You're doing it because it's enriching your district or it's helping, the economic prosperity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And arming us with those facts and figures so that we can make that case in a way that's going to resonate with those folks.
Yeah, that's great, Jennifer. And
is that something you can do for the committee? That'd be great.
That's what we're working on right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, who knows when we lobby or educate in Washington, what we hear is, well, we hear from people like you all the time. We need to hear from
And we can help too, because the local workforce boards all have our position papers, white papers that will kind of match. So
Abby, you hit on something very interesting. You mentioned like the private foundations. Do you think, obviously things are going to change. Do you think it's going to change enough that maybe these foundations might be a way to basically bolster what we're doing?
We're hopeful.
Do you mean by bolster, do you mean
like Gates Foundation, using places like that do have philanthropic efforts to tie in, maybe supplement some of our work?
Well, I don't think it's possible for the philanthropic sector to replace all the funding that's being given. I do think that we have opportunities for strategic partnerships to and enhance in very targeted ways. That's why, my fantasy around technology systems would make a huge difference. So I think very pointed, targeted investments. The other update I wanted to give is on the master plan for career education, and then this could take that point farther in the agenda, which is that now that the budget is passed, we know that there are a few budget items supporting the work. There's for the implementation of the master plan, not as much as there should be. It's a really tight year, but the GovOps agency is getting $1.5 million ongoing to develop and support a state workforce and education council that is to be set up. And I think there could be some very healthy and important conversations about the relationship with this board and that new council to be set up. There will be overlap in.
Can you give Joanna, sorry, just so she has full background, the why it's there and not somewhere else?
Yes, it was a decision by the governor's office to have the council embedded in an agency that would be a neutral convener. rather than one of the higher ed institutions or even the labor agency. Yeah. But, you know, education and workforce and career pathways and apprenticeship is the GovOps agency doesn't have that subject matter expertise. You know, so in a convening role, I mean, they'll build that muscle, they'll have the muscle, but we'll rely on all of us for the subject matter expertise. Right. And then there is $1 million in there, started at $4 million in the January governor's budget for regional coordination that does sit with the labor agency. And through philanthropic funding, actually through the Gates Foundation, we've been able to partner with the Boston Consulting Group and get that work started in 3 use case regions, being LA and then Empire and Far North State, have some really fascinating findings around regional coordination and really directed towards collective impact, consistent with the values and principles we were just talking about in our earlier conversation. That could be a board agenda item if that would be of interest, but the $1 million helps us continue that work and launch some pilots to test some of the hypotheses that have emerged from that research. And then the Chancellor's Office is getting $25 million to build out the career passport, which is a one of the 6 pillars of the plan. We think the one the governor is most excited about, and this will be a learning and employment record that will become a digital tool that will probably start with community college students, but ultimately will be a tool that people can use for applying to jobs with the intent of opening up employment to people without traditional 4-year degrees and increasing the use of skills-based hiring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're really articulating the skills that have been earned through the different modes of the modalities, whether it be work experience, whether it be educational attainment, whether it be apprenticeship programs, training programs, on the job stuff, right? So all of that is going to be taken into consideration of mapping the skills that we have, and it goes back to the transferability, right? Because everything has a way to map it and transfer. It doesn't necessarily only have to be in one job description. There's ways to be able to cross-list a lot of those opportunities, and it's going to be in a digital format. So that way, both the employer will then be able to have access to it to see what the pool looks like, and the employee will have access to the employers to see what their pool looks like and how that mapping looks like. And then this goes back to Abby's first day as well. I think it's going to be imperative that our California community colleges are more connected and closely working with our workforce development boards as well, right? So that committee that, Abby was talking about, we need to be at the table with everything that's going on of how we're going to be able to leverage the education attainment, whether, like those impacted students. Well, we're the most broad, and I'm biased, I'll be honest, right? The best educational provider out there. But again, it's going back to that point of the relationship that we have to have.
And I'll just add a couple of other points. To develop the career passport, there are a few different building blocks. One of them is a taxonomy or common definition for language around skills, which we need. The other, and this is also part of the state budget, 15 million, that Tony and his team have been doing, I think, amazing work on credit for prior learning, which could really be, and I think has the promise of being a game changer in the whole public workforce system that will enable people to get college credit for skills they've developed on the job and for training they developed through much of our system, including apprenticeship. And research has shown that people are, I've heard it's up to 10 or 11 times more likely to complete their degree if they start with credits for
Give them a head start.
Yeah.
Give them a head start, and they're already halfway there, because then they're able to actually change the psyche of the individual, that they can be successful in college because they've already done it. It's just being able to give them that awareness, because a lot of it is they're intimidated by it. So it's identifying that adult learner, or like classifying what that adult learner is, and knocking down those barriers for them. I love it. Well, also the e-transcript too, right? Because it's also taken into consideration our high school partners, our partnership with CDE to be able to take the work that they're doing in career education and career technical education programs and how that can be mapped, and whether it's dual enrollment, whether it's articulation, whatever that looks like, we're going to have to encompass all of those because there's skills in everything that we do.
I think there's been some interesting work, Jeremy. I'm looking at the higher ed construction careers, where in some of the locations with community college partnerships, folks have been able to get some credits that's enabled them to move on to construction management roles or other roles for which they need a community college credential.
Yeah, we were doing whatever prior learning.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
our pre-apprenticeship curriculum.
Yeah. It's very promising.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Anyone in other locations? Can't see you, but.
I know.
Nope. Okay. Any public comments? Emily?
No public comments on YouTube or.
All right. Nope.
No comments in the room.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna move on to the legislative report, which kind of will take us through.
So like Emily just did, I'll probably just try and smash all this stuff into one output, which is covering the next three items as well. We have three active bills that are currently pushing through the legislature right now, which we are monitoring. There are 7 others that have been pushed to the 2-year track. The 3 bills that are currently being debated right now are SB 638, SB 534, and AB 338. We can send over specifics around those pieces of legislation. Obviously, they're still in committees being assigned. So other than referencing what they are, I'd be remiss to say what our position is, like that. So at this time, just know that there are 3. There are very minimal expectations on our work, and there's, I would say, a high likelihood of their completion. Maybe not passage or signature, but completion. As far as.
So you'll share those.
Yeah, we'll share those via email with all the committee members. As far as the budget items, we received a $10 million allocation in the budget for an expansion of the HIRE program, which is our prison to employment or justice involved related program. We have a $5 million pass-through for the counties of LA and Ventura in relation to the fires. This is previously allocated at a $50 million, but during the budget negotiations got reduced to $5 million. We'll be working with Opportunity LA and Ventura County on figuring out what the split of those funds. It is not specific in the allocation, how they are going to be split. And so we'll be working directly with those communities to figure out how to position those funds. There's also a $20 million pass-through for the San Pedro Training Center, which is Port of LA and Port of Long Beach, for the lashings and whatnot. You know, I had the privilege of going to see the existing training set location, which is not really a training center, it's just a yard, which looked very dangerous. So I'm actually really pleased that they're moving forward with developing something that is actually going to, you know, have safety a little bit more front focused in my mind, which is good because that's a really dangerous job. So those are the major provisions within the budget that affect the Workforce Development Board. I know that there are other budget provision items that Abby already relayed as they attribute to the master plan. There is no specific budget item in this year's round for Jobs First. We are still in the process of allocating the remaining funds from the original $400 million allocation. Those awards.
How much is left?
It's around 80 million to be programmed this year, and another 40 million remaining in the next subsequent year. There is also the $15 million tribal allocation, which has been announced. I believe the awards are forthcoming. This first round, I actually was able to just review the applicants and this proposals from the staff recommendations yesterday. There are roughly 14 applications which are being suggested, and it will encapsulate the full $80 million. Those will go up to the committee for review of the final application and assessment by the Jobs First Council, I believe next week, and then for final remediation of the award amounts and all that will be done in public notice sometime October is my guess. So that is the bulk of the remaining funds available in California Jobs First allocation. So we've gone through the first series of rounds, which is the planning monies, the $5 million that Bruce mentioned at the top of the meeting today, the $14 million allocation for the Catalyst rounds has now been fully distributed by our regional partners. And so those are contracted and in place, and a bulk of the funding within those $14 million pools with each of the 13 regions has been programmed around workforce development many times in either building out or expanding an HRTP, which is our high road training partnerships. So very much so in line with our expectations and our willingness to, inject capital into these 4 strategic areas. And all of those are aligned with the regional plans that were developed by our 13 regional partners. This next stage of investments is going to cover the accelerate and bet sectors on the placemat, as we're calling it, which are your advanced manufacturing related items in ag tech, life sciences, semiconductor, microelectronics, and space, satellites, and defense. And so those are where the primary investments are coming from, the Jobs First allocation of this 80 million. There is coverage is to a certain extent in all 13 of the regions, which is always a challenge in trying to get out that kind of pool of funding. And so we're really excited about that announcement. We'll be forthcoming in the next few weeks and months. So that is our budget, our ledge, and a Jobs First update.
Yeah.
Well, we had such a robust dialogue at the front end. I figured I can kick mine out quick and then,
I like that.
next resolution.
Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Could you just, what were the 4 again? Just want to make sure that advanced manufacturing.
So the 4 in the accelerated sector of the Jobs First plan are life sciences, ag tech, space, satellites, and defense, and then semiconductor microelectronics.
You might want to send me your print around.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for those who are just being onboarded. I'll send you a packet of information, which includes the California Jobs First information, the master plan for career education, K-16 collaboratives, which is the 3rd leg of our stool. And, I really see us as the seat to the soul, the thing that makes all those things work and actually helps drive what the local boards will need to do to be more aligned with some of this effort. And so I'll just go to the next page. So to advance some of that work, my staff and I, and we will be inviting board members to come along with us. We'll be visiting all 13 regions to engage with the industry advisory groups they have in the local board settings, to engage with the practitioners on investments that we've made through the HRTP and HRCCs, and also to get best practices and best practice sharing amongst the local boards, especially in understanding what could happen with prospective changes to WIOA. If we can figure out what all of these communities and areas and local boards are doing well and build a playbook of things that can be replicated in other areas, maybe we don't have as much, consternation about change, or are able to actually advance a block grant scenario in a way which has some strategic backing behind it and still has, the input from all of our membership.
Do you, can I just ask a quick question? Do you want board members here to try to participate in those meetings?
I would love to. What we will
Could you
do.
share that agenda with us?
We will be sending out, so right now we're coordinating with the local boards in the 13 regions. They have to bring some of their folks together to then tell us what dates are going to be good. We're going to send out that list of dates. Prospective members, obviously, if you're within that territory, we would love for you to be there. If you're within the industries identified by those regions, we would love for you to be there. We will basically spell out all that. It'll be about a 2-day, 1 day with visits and meetings about industry-based engagement, understanding supply and demand in the territory, especially around those industry profiles that were advanced by the regions themselves. And then the second day or depending on how formats, will be more of those best practice sharing and understanding what the challenges are at the local level, understanding where we have ability to influence or assist, and really just trying to get into the weeds. So more formative on touching and feeling what we're doing currently, seeing how it's activating within those communities themselves, working with them on best practice sharing and challenges, and then preparation for what could come down from federal guideline changes or changes to the WIOA.
Some of us have sent you our due
Yes. Yeah, so we have, of the 13, we have 5 in the process of being finalized, the dates. The planning of it is, still in process. And then the chancellor's office has kindly offered up their willingness to bring participation from the community colleges to more fully align the community colleges to local boards. So in a lot of sense, this is our opening salvo of getting out into the world and trying to build this collaboration under the Jobs First and Master Plan heading to advance the work that local boards are doing, but also in preparation for what could happen on the federal level.
And I'll add to that. I mean, it's a strong encouragement to participate and go to these open house events. I was able to fortunately attend one of them and was super impressed with the engagement and the work that they were doing. It was more specifically with the caregivers project with HRDP one, but you actually get to see the outcomes, and we don't normally get to see the actual outcomes on a routine basis. So I appreciate you opening that up and allowing us to engage in that.
Correct. Sir, Angel, did you?
No, I was just gonna comment that I've got both of those here and I've been reading through them, but if you have a summary document, like a one pager, job, because I think it's 100.
No, there's
something
a
pages.
summary doc.
That would help. Yeah.
Yeah, I get read through it.
It tells it all.
The placemat,
Yeah,
that's what we call it. Okay, perfect. That would be great.
You
In
can
fact, I
just
think
keep it at
it's.
home, you can serve your whole family.
Page 117.
Any do you want to continue?
I can continue.
Yeah, why don't you go on to advisory?
So,
And state rehab, yeah.
a number of members, including some of our newer members, have expressed interest in being a part of advisory groups or at least industry recognized groups that were. So we're trying to formulate how to accommodate both the needs of our regions and the needs of the industry-based alignment from the Jobs First plan. So the GoBiz team is currently doing what the statewide engagement portion. So that's the agency level engagement on sector specific strategies. Where we are seeing a now more relevant understanding is because of how the state is broken up in a local board setting, that ours should be more of the regional basis. And so in preparation for that, what we're doing in the roadshow is to launch that effort in combination with this. So those advisory groups will probably center around 13 for a couple of reasons. One, 45 is too many to manage.
Yeah.
And so given our staff provisions and what our expectations are, to do a little bit more handholding with board members to engage at the local level more explicitly. We now have some members who are on local boards. One of them is the chair of the Riverside board and seated members as well. But being able to open up that two-way communication from the industry needs perspective, which has been lacking on the statewide basis really for a number of years. So part of this is to activate you guys as members of our board to feed information to us, so that way we can effectively program based on the demand challenges of the employers within those territories. And so as many of you who can and are able to or willing to be at the local board setting, hear the challenges and the opportunities and advance that information to us, that would be great. So we are actually in the process of reorganizing some staff to perform this work. And so each of you will have staff liaisons, which will have dedicated service territories and regions. And this is all coming together in concert with this roadshow that we're putting together as well. So any member who is interested in being a part of this is going to be able to participate. We're still working out some of the logistical challenges and the staffing challenges on our end, but that will be rolling out. We're doing our test case this week? Yes, so we have one member who is our test case and one staff who is going to be taking all the notes about what the issues could be and what the challenges will be and what support that they will need, so that way we can roll this out in a more explicit and strategic way. And thank you to Member Hijazi for being the first to sign up and be willing to walk down this with us. You are the guinea pig. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what does that exactly look like in your mind, or do we need to wait till the?
It will, well, so one of the things is every local board has industry advisory groups. What they look like, how they meet may be different. What their conversations are. I was as privileged of going to one in Riverside, and it was very much so open forum dialogue, less so on the strategic needs, but then on the sideline of the conversation, they were asking me specifics about, are there these kinds of programs here that are state funded? So part of it is about building that presence, so that way we can be more informed. And the one thing that I don't necessarily know mechanically is it that we need the board member to be at all of them, or we will really want to make them be that champion for information sharing and then have staff be the supportive entity. But, you know, 45 local boards, we have 39 board members. It could be 1-to-1. It could end up being that some don't participate or whatnot. But we want to try and get that input from all 45 local boards, industry advisory groups that are very specific to their territory and jurisdictional challenges that we just don't hear yet. And so it's mainly about that, trying to get more information sharing between us and local boards.
So like the state board members showing up and saying, we're here to hear what your concerns are, translate that back up to state board staff, inform program development, delivery. Okay.
And then for us to deliver on those expectations so if we hear that there is a semiconductor manufacturer in Santa Barbara County who is having trouble activating a program with the local board, I can take something that was built at Sierra College that is running through SETA and hopefully replicate a program dynamic there, right? And so this will just empower us to do better best practice sharing, to do better workforce systems updates and upgrades, and hopefully in solidifying, fostering more connection with master plan and with what community colleges will do.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought it back to the master plan, because that's part of the element with the master plan of the regionalization work, right? Bringing all the different advisory boards and committees, because in every educational program, if it's funded by Perkins, we're required to have an advisory committee. Well, that advisory committee is also taxing the same people in the same community 3 or 4 different times, right? So how do we become more effective of bringing the parties together and doing it, not taxing, you know, our partners?
Well, that was one of the key findings of the research around regional coordination, is that employer engagement is just our free for all. You know, it's really organized.
And everybody says they do it, and everybody does it.
And it drives employers crazy. They don't know why somebody's calling me from here and what this group.
So it's all in an effort to improve our ability to serve our partners in both local board setting, but really in the employer setting, right? We don't have a through line on the information sense of where the demand challenges are. We get anecdotal evidence, right? Or we get a systemic report that says there's a shortage of nurses. Well, I want the more specific report of, I can't hire this occupation and why, because we can activate around that. And so thinking about it from the perspective of how do we just, you know, not just disseminate information down, but get enough information back up to where we're programming.
Yeah.
That covers everything. So you can go to state rehab unless there are questions.
Any questions, comments? No, state rehab, go.
Hillary Lentini.
She's not here.
Do we have an ECPL update? Or no, not today's?
No.
No.
Okay.
On the agenda.
Okay.
Is Hillary not here?
Hillary is not present.
Yeah.
So we can skip the state.
Skip that, I know.
Okay. Under other business, I do have something that was mentioned earlier from Anthony, so go into that item.
I did. Thank you for that. I just wanted to touch base and let everybody know on a couple of different things. You know, as we talked about a little bit in regard to the budget aspect of it, we were awarded the 25 million to be able to develop the career passport. It is going to be a collaborative approach of engagement with all the different entities and parties that we talked about. There was also, from a budget perspective, there was 5 million ongoing, 15 million one time to expand the credit for prior learning that we're talking about. So we're going to continue to do that. There was the 5 million that was set one time funded to support the workforce recovery in the impacted areas of the fires, LA fires. More in the Eaton and the Palisades area specifically to help support the growth of you know, construction programs, apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship opportunities to support the recovery and the rebuild for that. That's all I got from a budget in. I mean, there's additional funding that's going to be able to provide growth as we start to grow, because you know we got to be able to make sure that we have sustainability put into everything that we're doing. There's some funding to create a common cloud data platform, trying to streamline a lot of the processes so that way we could have a uniform data system, data highway that's going to be able to share us.
When will that be done?
Done. That's a great question.
Started soon.
Yes. Starting soon.
Done much later.
What's your objective in terms of when you like?
So the problem is with this fiscal year, the budget crisis, our request was 168 million. We got 12. Right? We know that the infrastructure system throughout the entire state it's gonna be complicated. So we're gonna look at creating a demonstration within, as you know, Abby mentioned, like we've got regions, but we gotta create the demonstrations before we can scale. 12 million will not scale us throughout the entire state. We know that. So it's gonna be this systematic approach of trying to prove it out. The other thing, two other items that I wanted to talk about is in August, I don't have the specific dates, but I'll share it with the team. We've been doing our economic impact report. It's the 2025 economic report for what the California Community College's impact is for the state of California. It's pretty impressive. We've seen a lot of growth in the economic impact itself. I mean, I think I saw like double-digit increases on some of the rate of return, and I believe for $1 invested, it's $1.50 back in a rate of return component of it, right? So that report is going to be the webinar is going out in August. I'll distribute the final report when we get that to the team, and you could disseminate throughout.
Present on it in our October meeting.
Okay. Jot that one down. And then the last thing that I really wanted to highlight is if you haven't been tracking, we talk about workforce and workforce shortage, and I mentioned it earlier about the healthcare and the impact of nursing. There's a bill out there, it's called AB 1400. It's going to allow and authorize the California community colleges to offer a baccalaureate degree at a program, right?
At a what program?
It's a pilot program, right?
Okay. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, AB 927 allowed permanency for the California community colleges to offer applied type programs, right? Nursing is one of those areas that we know that there's a shortage, and I'm going to read off a little bit of statistics just to give you guys a little bit of insight. So the current and projected shortages right now, there's 18% shortfall that's projected by HRSA as of 2024 in 2037. California ranks among the top 10 states for the greatest nursing needs. The rural counties face a shortage nearly 3 times larger than any metro regions. We know that there's an 8% nursing workforce consistent of traveling nurses. We've talked a little bit about some of the traveling nurses. Hospitals pay it 4 times more for a traveling nurse. And then some exposure for traveling nurses as well. And then there's economic instability. We talked about the potential of what this opportunity for the Bill 1400 would be able to provide is serving additional 2,000 students to be able to get their baccalaureate degree in nursing. On average, just give you a little bit of a perspective of what that cost is. A student currently pays for the baccalaureate degree in community colleges just over $10,000. And so imagine, right, getting a bachelor's degree for $10,000 and immediately getting into the workforce starting at $100,000 a year, right? So that rate of return is phenomenal. By comparison, it's almost $40,000 at the UCs and the CSUs, 70 at the UCs, and 120 plus at the privates, right? So we all talk about that financial impact in the student debt. This also just makes that logical sense in my head. The thing that I really wanted to focus on is this is complementary. It's not competitive. We know that there's 24,000 workforce shortage in our nursing right now. And that gap is continuously to grow and grow and grow. And we're not doing anything about it because we need to be able to be complementary. So the work that we're doing is to be able to help support our CSU partners and create those partnerships of what it looks like to do a 2+2 articulation agreement with them, but also opening up seats. We don't open up seats. We don't expand our program. We don't get more nurses into the workforce itself, right? So just again, amplifying that aspect of it is it's not an either or. This is an and situation. This is an and plus opportunity. So our call to action is basically we want to be able to make sure that we are in a position to approve the bill. get it through. We are seeking support. If anybody wants to provide support, I have my cards. I brought cards this time. You could reach out to me and we could go in a little bit more detail. I didn't want to take up too much time, but if we don't do something now, then I mentioned this earlier, a little tongue in cheek. I'm not getting any younger and I need to make sure that I've got a competent nurse. I go seek my medical treatment. And if we don't do something now, then all of our health is going to be at risk. And again, I said I'm biased because I think our California community colleges provide the best training infrastructure because I've heard it firsthand from a lot of our employers that they enjoy hiring the community colleges over anybody else. But because there's a shortage, they are forced to hire the best of the worst, right? Whatever that is, because there's just shortcuts.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this isn't an agendized item. We can't engage in a huge discussion. We could put it on potentially for next time and continue the conversation.
Can they just talk?
It can be spoken on in general public comment.
I mean, it was just a question.
I know.
Can we say public comment?
Yeah, let's go to public comment.
Yeah, it's public comment now. Go ahead.
Well, I'm curious, having spent a lot of time in nursing with community colleges, how does that impact the associate degree?
It doesn't. So great question. And I have that point. I skipped over that one because there's this fallacy out there that clinical placements are going to be one of the barriers. We know clinical placements in faculty is going to be a barrier, but these are ADNs. They're already RNs. They're getting the higher level education attainment, and a lot of that is taught online. There are no additional clinical placement restrictions or requirements for that. It's being able to get your credentials and your additional skills in leadership development component of it. So it's advancing those students. The bill specifically spells out there's a cap. It's the 15 eligible schools that can apply for it. You can have 25% of your current enrollment or a cap of 30 students, maybe 35 students, right? So based upon approved seat count and, VRN approved seats, then Bureau of Registered Nursing, then so there is zero impact, right?
Yeah.
When you look at that.
Thank you. After my 20 years in healthcare workforce development, I personally, my opinion, think the best RN is an associate degree nurse who continues her education. They have the best technical skills at what is a nurse. And then the bachelor's degree gives them the higher level thinking.
So to add to that, one of the things, because there's a progress of a degree attainment, and we know that there's two impacting areas, clinical placement and faculty shortage. But if we don't get our master's degree, because there's a requirement that you have to have your master's degree to be able to teach the program. But if we don't fill that pipeline, then we're not going to solve one of those issues, right? I'm working on clinical placements on a whole nother journey, but we could talk about that forever. But yeah, we got to put them in through that baccalaureate to be able to expand the master's program.
Other public comments?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is outside of my wheelhouse, so maybe it was already asked and answered, but is there strong career pathways established for these new programs?
Absolutely.
Because that's one of the things community colleges do better than all of our other state institutions, getting students degrees, which I love, the $10,000. But if they have to kind of go through the traditional pipeline to find a job when we have such a great need, that's going to slow down that progression. So I just wanted to see if the intention of strong pathways to careers is part of this.
Absolutely. So we work with an awesome consulting group to be able to develop what those pathways look like, specifically in certain careers. Behavior health was one of them, but the nursing was another one. So you could take, for example, you've got a healthcare provider, and that could be a medical assistant, right? There's a starting point for everybody to get into it. You don't necessarily always have to go 8 years of school to get your degree, right? But you can start and obtain those certifications and credentials and lead up to that nursing degree and nurse practitioner, right? So that's when you start getting into the physician opportunities as well. But yeah, you go from medical assistant, certified nursing assistant, a vocational, vocational nurse, right, LVN. And then you go into the actual nurse. And we also have an apprenticeship program in some of the post-licensure programs as well. So if you wanted to become a specialist in a surgery room, then you have perioperative nurses, right? And those perioperative nurses are,
Okay.
Psych.
yes.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah. So I'll share, I've got the document, and I'll share that with you kind of as well too.
Thank you, Angel.
Yeah, this isn't related to nursing, actually. I don't know if it can be responsive, so I'll express it as a curiosity in regards to the LA fire response. I know a lot of impacted communities within LA extend to, especially in the Inland Empire, because of housing crisis issues. The houses aren't getting built in the next 10 or 20 years. So a lot of people are relocating into the Inland Empire as far as our desert communities is, and again, if this can be shared at this point or in the future, is any of that LA fire response also include some of the external impacted areas to provide retraining or additional services? And obviously, I'm talking specifically where we're at out in San Bernardino, Riverside County. They're moving to our areas and the jobs aren't necessarily, or the jobs may be there, but they need the retraining and the development of the workforce for our unique environment. So is any of that, again, I can get that information later, but.
Yeah, let's talk offline, but that's not stipulated in the existing legislation, but we should definitely talk offline.
There is work that's being done.
There's work being done that's different. Yeah. Those are two different sets of conversations, but yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
We're gonna have to be explicit on this part.
Okay. I have to read something. Go ahead. And then I have something I want to bring up before we adjourn. So should I wait or I'll read this first.
Yeah.
This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on items of interest within the jurisdiction of the board. Comments are limited to no more than 2 minutes per speaker pursuant to the Bagley-Keene Act. The board shall take no discussion or action other than a referral on any issue brought forth here. Emily, is there any public comment?
No public comment on YouTube or via email.
Got it.
Any in the room? No, in LA or in San Francisco?
No.
Thank you so much. Okay, you can say your piece and then.
Say my piece and then adjourn you. So first of all, it was just an honor to be here and I'm very excited about working with every single one of you. I don't know if we have shared contacts. I don't have contacts for everyone here. Yeah, if you could. And I know a lot of people email who shared emails with me, but always feel free to email me or call me. I'm here if I can be helpful in any way. I'm accessible. The other is AI, I brought up AI in the beginning. Would it be of interest in our October meeting to maybe have someone, we could do it on video even, but really talk about what's happening with AI?
Yes.
Yeah, I have to tell you that.
Hollywood.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Include Hollywood.
Yeah, well, it's actually some of the people who are at the foundational level of it. This conversation I just did with Reid Hoffman, who founded PayPal, LinkedIn, and then he was in the founding team of OpenAI. I asked him, I said, what does this look like 10 years from now? And he said, I can't even project out a year. He said, that's asking me to look in the last wave of innovation and project out 100 years. That's how quickly it's moving. And I have to tell you, when I went to interview him, I interviewed his AI twin, which was so bizarre because he, you're talking to, it was him and responding in real time, knew exactly what I was wearing and it was a twin. So it's scary. And then there's a huge opportunity and I'd love us to get ahead of the opportunity side of it. So if we can, I'll figure out who it is and we'll bring it in.
I actually need some notes from that. Right.
I can help you.
You know that word.
Right. Let me know how I can agree. There's a lot of initiatives around AI that we're leading.
Great.
We've got a digital innovation center that is a hub that's supporting the incubation of a lot of the work. Because we're really making sure that it's so humanized in the work that we do.
That would be good to be part of the October.
Yeah, we'll coordinate together on that because I think that would be really helpful.
I'm sure that this is a part of it, but I think thinking about what we should be doing now to prepare kind of companies in the state for AI and how you use that as a catalyst for more jobs, right? Like using AI and then just thinking about I think you made an excellent point to start the meeting, the way AI is going to affect entry level positions. And so what do entry level positions look like post AI?
Yeah.
Right. So thinking about, and sorry, last thing I think is how do we, to use the language you used earlier, stay abreast of the AI development?
Yeah.
It does feel like we're moving so quickly, it's hard to keep track.
Yep, yeah, but we can continue to update that. Again, it's gonna be a functional change. It's not, and it will impact small business, large business, it'll impact everyone.
It's like internet or email, right? Like
Exactly,
that
exactly.
Changed how we.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, or these devices, however.
Yeah. And some of the research we've been exposed to suggests disproportional impact by gender. You know, that there's so many admin jobs held by women that will be replaced. So I think looking at who gets displaced, you know, as well as the barriers to entry.
And warehouse jobs, the combination of robotics and AI is gonna be, well, you see Amazon is laying off people left and right, so.
Excuse me, this is Gloria Young from San Francisco, and it's not will, it's now with respect to AI and how it's affecting the workforce. And secondly, I'm a part of a group in Silicon Valley and we're meeting about AI, so I'd really appreciate having that kind of conversation at our next meeting.
Fantastic. And I'll follow up with you too to hear about what you're doing, which would be great.
And Madam Chair, in that conversation, I'd love to hear about ways that we can maybe use that to like use AI to train the workforce or to, you know, the things that are cumbersome in the beginning to getting people into good jobs. If there's somebody who's thinking about it, because I know there's a lot of discussion about the concern, what it's going to do to the workforce, but how can we use it?
How do we catalyze it?
Yeah, to fill the gaps in our process and our systems.
All right. We will put that together and make sure we have a conversation around it. With no additional public comment and no further business, this meeting of California Workforce Development Board is adjourned at 3:00, and thank you all.